YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. In today's video, I got the worst moves from the 2019 NFL season, going back to the start of the offseason through the trade deadline. What were the worst moves? We got a bunch of honorable mentions, and then I go from 5 to 1 through my top 5. Did the same exact video for the best moves. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. 2 videos here covering the crazy moves on the offseason. Plenty of more NFL content on the channel and our second channel, the Goat House and the Goat House Plus, that new channel, Goat House Plus. There's a link in the description for that and in the comments. So please click on that, subscribe to it. Trying to reach that 40K goal on both the channels. Full predictions in season and even the off season. Free agency predictions, free agency coverage, NFL draft content like crazy. We got you covered. Please subscribe. Help us reach that goal. There's our Twitter, at Goat House NFL. Link in the description, comments for that. Every single day, talking football, whether it's live games, whether it's free agency moves, NFL draft moves, Senior Bowl going on right now, coaching hires, we got you covered there, so it's a must follow. And then there's our Patreon. Support us and gain extra content. There's a link in the description for that as well. To the honorable mention, worst moves of the season. There's a lot here, and we got a couple Texans moves at the top. The Texans trade Jadeveon Clowney for a third-round pick and players. It's a bad move because, obviously a top-tier pass rusher, a guy they could have definitely used in their playoff run. They make it to the divisional round. It's a guy they could have used, but the main part is I think they could have got a lot more. Looking at what other teams got for other players with their deals, whether they're expiring or not, I think they could have got a lot more. The only reason it didn't make the only reason it's an honorable mention and not in the top 5 is because, it did seem like Clowney wasn't going to play. So it was either just get nothing or get something. But at the same time, they did have a good amount of cap space. I guess they just didn't want to pay him. So thought it was definitely a pretty bad move, but didn't make the top 5. Another one, the Texans traded a third-round pick for Gareon Conley. I think this one actually might be worse because, you're at this point, the trade deadline, and you're only making, to me, you only make these types of trades. I hate trading away draft picks. I've always have. And you only make these type of trades if you think you're that piece away from, getting to the Super Bowl. And that obviously was not the case here. I think they overspent on Conley, just an average at best cornerback. And it kind of shows why Bill O'Brien should not be the GM and the coach, because he's going to just, get all the talent he can, to survive the year. And that's kind of what it looked like here. So I thought they overspent. I thought it was a little desperate, and with having other needs, it just wasn't smart. It just was not smart. The Bears trading Jordan Howard, early in the offseason for a 6th-round pick, just a 6th-round pick, and this one can not really that part. I guess looking at it that way, it's not that bad, but you wish it was more than a 6th-round pick. But the part that makes it really bad to me is that, the reason for they wanted to trade him, get him out of there, even though he was like a top 5 rusher consecutive years for the Bears, was because they felt he wasn't a fit in the Nagy system. And that kind of confused me because, running backs, almost any running back fits any system. You kind of want to have a 1-2 punch, and they kind of had that with Cohen. So they both complemented each other pretty well. But on top of all of that, they gain a 6th-round pick for Howard, but then and they open up a need. They have a need now, and they go and use a 3rd-round pick, 3 rounds higher, on a running back that does not fit any more than Jordan Howard. Actually, to me, fits less. Montgomery is, he's strong as hell. He's got a future, but there's not a whole bunch else to his game. So I don't get what they saw the difference between Howard and Montgomery in terms of fit. And Howard being a better back, and then them using a 3rd-round pick to get the running back, which they open the need up themselves while they have a bunch of other need. The more I'm talking about, the more I dislike it. It could have been close to making that top 5 because there's so many factors that make this very, very confusing all the way through. So, not a good move at all by the Bears. The Jags signing Nick Foles. And I almost didn't even, this might surprise people, but I almost did not put this in an honorable mention even. I definitely was not putting it in the top 5, and some people probably expect it in the top 5. And that's because Nick Foles hasn't really got a fair trial yet. We'll see what they decide to do. 4-year, $88 million, it's in there because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And it didn't work out in year one, but he got hurt in week one, and then he came off the injury earlier than expected, and it didn't really work out, but he didn't get much of a chance. But the kind of the upside, it's not a tremendous upside, obviously, because it's a lot of money, but the guaranteed money was $50 million. I've seen a lot worse. It could be worse. And I still think, the guy can play. The guy can play. So we'll see if he gets more of a shot here. It's kind of a to be determined one, but it is a lot of money at the end of the day. Obviously not a good move. Lions signed Trey Flowers. I like Trey Flowers, and he can be good for them, but 5-year, $90 million was just ridiculous. $90 million for a pass rusher that was kind of only good for 1 year on the Patriots. And it's still the question of, should Trey Flowers be, even be a 4-3-N, should it be a 3-4? I do like him where he's at, but you expected a little more play, and I did not expect $90 million. That's just a little much there. Kind of set the bar pretty high for some average, just above average pass rushers. The Redskins pay Landon Collins elite safety money, 6-year, $84 million, a whopping $84 million. With that contract, you're telling me that this guy's the best safety in football, and I'm going to tell you that he's not. He's a good football player, but he's nowhere near, not even close to the best safety in football. So way too much money there. I was very surprised by that. He plays pretty darn good in the box. He plays pretty good in the box. Talking safety, actual safety play. I don't see where they thought $84 million was a good. He's a good football player, but I just don't see where they. The $84 million. The Browns trade for Odell Beckham Jr. Thought that was a pretty bad move. Never really been a fan of him. I thought he was just a distraction. He's a heck of a receiver. But again, kind of going back to my point that I made, I don't really like trading picks. And if I'm going to trade a pick, it better be for not only a very, very good player, which Odell Beckham is, but a guy that's, there's no issues with, which there's a red flag there. But the main thing, you only trade picks, but a first-round pick if you don't have any other major needs. And that was not the case here. On top of them having other needs, at both tackle positions, they trade away one of their guards. So they're kind of opening holes here without having a first-round pick, and they end up being worse because they pretty much stayed the same. They did not fill any needs. That's kind of what happens to teams all the time. And he's a kind of a distraction on top of it. To me, it's a problem. So I did not like that trade. That was one of the worst, honorable mentions here. The Seahawks trade Frank Clark and replace with L.J. Collier. You could argue, they replaced with Clowney, but again, you opened up a hole here. A guy that fit, a guy that you could have paid too. Really, I don't think they would have done it, but you could have kept Frank Clark, paid him, and still traded for Clowney. They could have went on their run with Clowney and Frank Clark. It still was possible. Would they have been able to pay Clowney after this year then? That's kind of the question mark. It was still going to be possible, but it would have helped them. I didn't see a reason to trade Frank Clark, and kind of to, the picks they got some good picks, but then they moved around a little bit in the first round, but they ended up with a pass rusher in L.J. Collier, and pass rusher's kind of the interesting part there, because to me, I had him graded as a 3-4 end. I did not think he was a pass rusher, and I thought they would use him at 3 technique. They did not. They tried to use him at pass rusher, and that didn't work out so good yet. Still to be determined because he's a young talent, but yeah, that kind of played a part. Trading Frank Clark for some picks, they moved around a little bit, here and there. They end up with L.J. Collier in the first round, so that kind of goes together. A lot of confusing parts there. But maybe why it didn't get the top 5 is because, they end up getting Clowney. They didn't want to pay Frank Clark. Maybe he did want a little bit much. And the Cowboys pay Zeke $90 million. That's the highest paid running back by, $33 million would be the next most in terms of total value. That's pretty ridiculous. Zeke's a heck of a back, has been, will be. So I don't think they're not all of a sudden he's gonna turn to nothing. Not at all saying that. Good back. Zeke's agent did a heck of a job here. I don't know where they came up with $90 million. And they also limited themselves for the future. They do have a good amount of cap space, but that's because you go look at their free agents, because they have a long list of free agents, and I'm not just talking about Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. There's a lot more guys there. So they kind of put themselves in a situation where we know they have to re-sign Prescott. We know they're going to have to pay Amari Cooper. So they kind of set themselves in a position where they're going to have the same team next year, but, some different pieces here and there. They may not be able to pay a guy like Byron Jones. They overpaid for running back. It kind of set the bar. So a guy like, I expect Derrick Henry probably to get more, So that's going to be interesting, too. I do like Derrick Henry a lot more at this moment, but, certain amount of money I probably wouldn't pay for a running back, $90 million being that, and especially because every year, guys get paid based on the market, and the market is set by other players, and the market was not set to anywhere near $90 million, so I'm confused on how they got to that number there. That's kind of the number's kind of the main thing and kind of what they did to their future here. We're on to the top five worst moves. Number 5 is going to be the Giants. The Giants traded at the trade deadline for Leonard Williams, a pretty good player, pretty good 3-4 defensive end. Could provide a little more pass rush. A guy that has not been living up to the hype, though, not been playing to where he was when he first came in or where we expected. But the main thing is he's an expiring contract, and the Giants traded more than I expected for an expiring contract, a 3rd and a 5th round. That's, and it's kind of even worse that, there's, within the contract details, that 5th round pick could turn out into a 4th round pick if they extend him. And to me, that's a very confusing part, because to me, in terms of value, they gave up too much. But that's kind of why teams trade for the expiring guys, because they're not as valuable because their deal is expiring. And the Giants allowed them to, they basically gave the Jets a gift there. They basically gave, here, we're going to bump this up to a 4th if we sign him. That's kind of the beauty of the expiring deals and trying to get good players there. I think they overspent either way, and they're going to, they made it so they can give a little more, if they re-sign him, and that has not been done yet. I heard they were trying to do that, almost instantly when they got him. They couldn't work out a deal. So a lot of this is confusing to me, especially when you're kind of a rebuilding team. I think the rebuild started last year, so maybe you're in step 2 of the rebuild, but to me, you're still in the rebuild. You still have needs. Keep your draft picks. I hate trading draft picks, number 1. I hate trading draft picks for expiring deals, number 2. And I absolutely hate trading draft picks when you're still in that rebuild stage. So this was a very bad move. Leonard Williams, they could sign him. He could be good. They could provide a little more pass rush. So I'm not saying the guy's not going to be good or anything. It just was a confusing deal for the circumstances. So I did not like that one. Every one of these I'm talking about, I hate even more as I'm talking aloud about them. But there's 4 that I had as worse here. Number 4 is going to be the Jalen Ramsey deal. And this one was tough to put in here at the same time because Jalen Ramsey very well, I'd say Stephon Gilmore is the best corner in football. But Jalen Ramsey, going into next season very well could be the best cornerback in football. But kind of back to my point, I don't like trading picks. I would trade picks if it's number 1, a proven top-tier talent, which that is the case here. But number 2, you don't have any other major needs, and they have, as good as the Rams are, they have quite a bit, really. You look at, the whole offensive line may need a rebuild, a makeover, maybe besides one spot. And then you look at Aaron Donald all by himself in the D-line. You look at the pass rush is basically Fowler by himself. And even though Matthews played a little better, but, where is he going to get you in the future? But Fowler is also a free agent on top of it. And then on top of that, there's some other key pieces there. They could be okay for the secondary. They're going to need corner depth. May need grab another linebacker there next to Littleton. And they got to sign their own free agents, limited on cap. They have a lot of cap for future contracts. So that although they may have more cap than you expect this year, they're pretty hurt on the years to come. On top of all that, Jalen Ramsey needs to be extended. He needs to be extended. They tried to work out a deal already. They couldn't do it. We know his attitude. We know where he could be. He could be deciding to go anywhere else. Just like that. On top of that, it's a guy in the past that said he wanted to play for Las Vegas Raiders or the Tennessee Titans. I don't know. I never take those things seriously, where specifically they're saying. But at the same time, if I'm a GM and I hear a guy that's picking where he wants to play and kind of has that attitude, I'm not going to trade for him. Next part, I keep going on. As I'm talking about it, I hate it even more. You traded away 2 first-round picks, again, on top of having major needs, so you won't be able to fill those major needs with first-round picks for 2 years. They also traded a 4th-round pick. On top of that, you have a league where corners aren't as important as a position, yeah, it's pretty good if you have one of the top tier ones, I guess, which they do here. But it's a league where the corners are just going to get beat either way. The offensive, especially in a draft like this year with all the receivers, the key parts of these offensive weapons that are just going to beat one-on-one, they're going to beat these corners, even the great ones. Just where the league is heading, you don't trade 2 first-round picks for a corner. And at the end of the day, Jalen Ramsey could be the best corner in football. They could extend him. He could be great. But trading for this, kind of acting like that's the last piece to get you to the Super Bowl, you don't make the playoffs on top of it. I mean, there's a long list of why this was wrong here. So, yeah, we'll see if it pays off for them in the end. But it's kind of one of those things where I already think it didn't because they're missing out on their 2 first-round picks, and they might not even be able to sign it, extend him. I think I would, if I had to put money on it, it's tough. It's almost 50-50 at this point. I'd say they will be able to do it. But with Jalen Ramsey, his attitude, his thinking, you never know. So that was a rough one. Number 3, the Patriots trading away a second-round pick to me for an average receiver that to me just might have been a rental for this year because it's going to be a $6.5 million cap hit this year, and the Patriots have a long list of free agents, including Tom Brady and then top tier players. Look at the offensive line, look at the defense. There's players everywhere. So they may just have to cut him. They might not be worth it, especially what his play was to keep him. So they may have traded a second, even if they didn't, they traded a second round pick for a guy that didn't really help them much at all, and a guy that even if they keep could be around for a year longer. So that was a very confusing move. Maybe why it's worse than the Jalen Ramsey trade in my opinion is because at the end of the day the Rams did get a number 1 corner. The Patriots traded away a second round pick. It's a valuable pick there. For Sanu's been great. He's had a great career, but it was it might be basically nothing here if they do cut him. So even if they don't, so that was confusing. It's even more confusing now because it didn't really help them get anywhere. Eliminated very early from the playoffs, so confusing one there. One that maybe a lot of people forgot about. Very terrible move here. The Vikings in the second worst move. Before the season started, they traded away a 5th round pick for a kicker, Vedvik, the Norwegian, that was cut in a week. A week later, they cut this guy. So, yeah, 5th round pick's not that much when you think about it, but then when you think about it, they traded a 5th round pick for a kicker, and when they had Dan Bailey, who had a pretty good year, not to mention, and that they had to cut a week later. So it was like, here's a 5th. You traded a 5th for nothing here. So it's pretty bad. That was a pretty bad one. The Ravens, traded away a backup kicker that they knew more about than the Vikings did. Got a free 5th round pick, I guess. So maybe that's one that could have been in one of the, honorable mention best moves. But yeah, a bad move as it is. On top of that, all that, him getting cut within a week, pretty much tops it off. And I put it at number 2. If it wasn't for that part, it wouldn't be 2. That's the part where makes it really, really bad. Within a week cut. The worst move of the offseason season, pretty obvious, Antonio Brown. The Raiders trade away a 3rd and a 5th for a big problem. That's obvious. And you may say, yeah, Antonio Brown's an elite talent. 3rd and a 5th is pretty good for that type of talent here, and you're getting a good player. That's all very true. The guy didn't end up playing it down, but, the confusing part is, how the guy is, right now. I think, it feels like they just, okay, it's Antonio Brown, let's trade for him. There's no way they had a conversation with this guy, beforehand. I think all it would have took was, a conversation with this guy for you to know. That's how bad it is, for you to know that you cannot trade for him. And it caused nothing but problems on top of it. Obviously, the whole thing with Mayock, him not practicing, there was something new every week, and it led us to believe and be quite confident about that he never intended to play for the Raiders. The Raiders were just pretty much part of his game, a game that he was playing. So that was a very bad move. It hurt them in multiple ways too, because they traded a 3rd and a 5th round pick. It was a distraction. There was all kinds of problems. But it also hurt. They didn't think they needed another receiver. They drafted Renfro pretty late. But they and they drafted Tyrell Williams to kind of complement AB. That's kind of a receiver you put with AB. So if they didn't get him, a lot of things may have been different. I think they would have drafted one, in a pretty good receiver class last year, a very good one. They would have drafted one a lot earlier. Who knows? Maybe they would have ended up with a guy like A.J. Brown, somebody that kind of similar play to Antonio Brown, just one guy I'm throwing out there that could have been, who might be the rookie of the year, who knows? So it kind of hurt them in that way too. They thought they didn't need to fill a hole there, throughout the whole season. So, or off season, I should say. So, pretty crazy there. So, and what's going on with him now too? It's just, it's hard to believe that they, I wish they would have sat down and talked to the guy before trading. I guess, thinking Antonio Brown, you may not have to do that, but I don't think that was ever done, because I think it would have been quite clear that you should not trade for that guy. So it's just a big mess, and that's really why it's number one there. But as I talked about some of these, even some on the honorable mentions list, I start to hate him even more. So I wish I could have put those in the top 5, but there was just so many bad moves here. But again, I did the same video for the best moves. Let me know your guys' thoughts on both videos there, where you would rank some of these, or maybe some I missed out on here. But plenty more NFL content on the channel, plenty more to come. Can't wait for the Super Bowl. Can't wait for free agency and NFL draft. We have you covered on all that. Please subscribe to both channels. Follow us on Twitter. Link in the description and comments for all of that. That's going to do it, though. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.